Hi, Adam. I'm happy to help. I must say, I opened this up and I thought it was going to be pixelated or have clip art in it or whatever, but I was really surprised. I think it looks professional. I think it looks contemporary. If I did anything with it, you know what? I just might play with the hierarchy just to see if you like that different look. And I would also make sure that the kerning is super even. But other than that, I just had a couple questions for you. Did you create this logo? If so, that's fantastic. I can give you, like I said, different layouts with it. Like I might see how that looks bigger. I might see how Red Point Medical looks stacked and to the right. I might experiment. The other thing I might do is pair this decorative font with an easy to read sans serif, or just like make you an entire branding guide. I don't know if you need to go that far, but you do want to pair the logo with a typeface that you use for everything so that all of your branding, correspondence, anything you write down is consistent. So just to tell you exactly what I'm talking about, if you don't already know, you probably do. The kerning is the space between the letters. That's really important in design because when you print, suddenly something like the space between the N and the T will look really big, and then you can see like the D and the P, it's not as large. So stuff like that. So otherwise, that's all I was going to suggest for yours. The final thing I was going to suggest is that you redraw it in Illustrator, not Photoshop, because Illustrator is a vector program, which means it redraws any shape you create in here mathematically. So no matter how much you zoom in on it, it's super sharp. So that's what designers do. I almost all the time they create anything that's going to be reproduced many different ways. Like you might have this on a sign, you might have it on a shirt, you might have it on an embroidered hat, but you want to be able to put this all over town, so you want a nice sharp rendering. Photoshop, let me see if I have this handy. I don't, but Photoshop is uh, let me just show you raster versus vector. So the difference is right here. So Photoshop is pixel based, and people typically use that for like painting or photography, but they don't use it for commercial design just because of how it prints. So if you zoom in on your Photoshop work, you're going to start to see the dithering around the edges, and like Illustrator, which is sharp. So all that, I'm happy to redraw it for you in Illustrator, and then just play around with the hierarchy. I think it is fine. I can also suggest a like a typeface to pair with this. So as far as how much, I don't know. I mean, that's hardly anything. It might take me a couple of days. I'll definitely put you, because we're friends, I'd put you on the, I'm friends with Stacy. I'd put you on the low end of what I charge. So I don't know. If I play with the layout, that might take me an hour or two at 25 per hour. And then anything else I could see, if I were to redraw this, I would just ask you for the font, and I can easily recreate the icon. That's maybe another 2 or 3 hours. So is that like 5 times 25? I had to get out my calculator, but that's the low end. I'd be happy to help. It sounds like a fun job. So I hope I didn't go on and on and on, and I hope that's helpful. Let me know. Hi, Adam. I think this looks really good. I didn't know what to expect. Um, I love that you found a decorative font. This is definitely not a font that you see on everybody's computer, and it will help you stand out. I like the logo. It's really eye-catching, but it doesn't compete in a negative way with the logo that you created. So, you know, the suggestions I have at this point is number one, you've got to redraw this in Illustrator. And the reason is, let me show you, raster versus vector. And I'm sorry if you already know this. I'm assuming you don't. I don't know nothing about the feet, so we're even. But Photoshop does this when you zoom in. It pixelates. It's made up of pixels, right? It's made up of tiny squares. In Illustrator, if you zoom in on it, it's always going to be sharp. It updates in some kind of mathematical way. And that's why designers use Illustrator to draw logos, because you never know. You're going to send it to a printer. You're going to send it to maybe an embroidery company. You're going to send it to a sign maker, but they all need it to be scalable. So I would redraw it in Illustrator. Let me just show you. This is Illustrator. So no matter how much I zoom in, it's super sharp. Okay, so that said, I would do that for you. I would also find a font to pair with this. So all of your correspondence, you want to pick something that's easily readable that will pair well with the decorative font you've chosen. The other thing I would do is I would get in between the letters and I would make sure that the kerning is even. If you look at the logo, you can see that the spacing is uneven. It doesn't look deliberate. So like the N and the T, because of the space between the bottom parts of these letters, it looks a lot bigger than, say, the D and the P. So you can get in there and hit the Alt key and move the right and left arrow keys around at the same time to tighten that up, but that's also something I would do. And then the final thing I would do is I might just play with hierarchy so that you can see how this looks different. Maybe Redpoint and Medical are stacked on top of each other, and then the logo is bigger to the left. Or maybe do it more in a V formation, and I don't know. I would experiment in that way, but I think it's really fine. I guess my final question for you is, where did this this is called the mark. I'll call it a logo. Where did this come from? Did you draw that? If so, I think that's fantastic. If you got it from stock art or clip art somewhere, let me know and I can redraw that so that it looks more unique. But I think it all works really well together. I'm impressed that you found a font that I've not seen on everybody's computers, and that's an important part of the design process. Anyway, so that said, I don't know if you want something more illustrative. I was looking at medical logos, and they're all pretty clean. Like if you wanted something more along the lines of something, you know, that had a little bit more graphic look to it, what I would do is I have a whole process for that. I would do 100 sketches, like thumbnail sketches. I would present you maybe with 10 of them, and then we would narrow it down, and then I would pick one, and then I would draw it digitally, and then I would do a bunch of color studies, and I would do typography studies, and then you would okay every milestone until we got the final one done. And then I would also create for you a branding guide that said, this is what it looks like normal, this is what it looks like black and white, these are the dimensions that you're allowed to put type next to it, like ½ inch, you're not allowed to put anything closer. This is what you're not allowed to do with it, and this is the font that you pair with it. So if I were to create it from scratch, I would go through that entire process. So if you wanted to do something like that, we could. Although, like I said, I think with what you described, I think your logo works really well. And again, I would redraw it, and maybe, I don't know, if you created that from scratch, I wouldn't change a thing. The other thing I thought about, I was looking at rock climbing logos, and they're all sorts of cool. And I think though that you're going to send the wrong message, and I think you're on the right track. The only thing that sort of caught my eye was the idea of one of those clips. Like maybe that would go with your red cursor there, but I don't know. I don't think you need to do that, and I think you'd send a confusing message. Anyway, these are all my thoughts. Let me know how you want to proceed. Bye-bye.